Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Way is in Training. This is a podcast exploring how warriors should train and fight, as well as how they should live. We will talk about technique, but we'll also dive deep into fitness, mindset, and strategy. We will explore leadership and philosophy as well. So whether you are a young soldier, a veteran police officer, a responsible armed citizen, or simply someone looking for an authentic life, let's examine how the lessons of combat and preparation for it can help us fulfill our potential. Let's explore the way together and learn how the discipline of training can show us our true selves amidst the chaos of life.
Hey everybody, on this episode I've got my friend Chris Workman, formerly of Ranger Regiment and now the brand new NCOIC of the AMU's competition side, action shooting side. So we were talking about that a little bit before the recording came on, and I'm pretty stoked about this because it is well deserved and it's going to be a good gig for you, I think. Obviously you're a competitive shooter yourself, you've got real world experience, but just give everybody a quick rundown on your background in case they don't know, especially because a lot of my guys that watch this aren't necessarily competitors per se.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So,
yeah. So I joined the Army in 2008, and then got assigned to 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment in 2009. Ended up doing 10 deployments with them from 2009 till about 2018, and ended up moving up to regiment itself after that, working in the 75th 3 shop. So I was running all the training for all 3 battalions up there, as well as RRC, Regimental Military Intelligence Battalion. And I did that for about 2 years. But I think the most important thing here was, I felt like even at regiment, I lacked the reps as far as marksmanship goes. So the forum I kind of pursued and looked at was competitive shooting. So I think I started that journey, I don't know, probably 15 years ago now, while I was still at regiment. And I had met Ken Rose, who at the time, he was the team chief for the instructor training group. That's a team within the marksmanship unit that primarily focuses on training. So I met Ken shooting competitively, and he had asked me to come over to the marksmanship unit as an instructor for probably a couple years. But I was still doing, fun and exciting stuff at regiment. So I didn't take him up on the offer until I ended up at regiment doing more administrative stuff for about 2 years. So once I got sick of that, I ended up taking Ken up on the offer, and then moved over to the marksmanship unit in July of 2020 to the instructor side. So
I got to interrupt real quick.
Yeah,
Wait, you mean you don't like pushing paper?
No.
I'm shocked. Yeah, I'm shocked. Man. I never would have thought that. All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry for interrupting, brother.
No, I don't think most of us guys do not like doing that stuff. So, but yeah, Ken's somebody who I deeply respect and admire. And whether he knows it or not, he definitely mentored me, and kind of showed me what the example was. And then, showed me what the importance was of instructing, and not only that, but just the way that he presented that information and influenced soldiers across the force, and kind of changed cultures within those units. So I got over there in 2020 under the tutelage of Ken Rose. And then quickly became the assistant team chief for the instructor group, and did that until just recently. So as of a couple of days ago, I moved over to take over the team chief position at action shooting.
So you hadn't been there that long when we met, right? Because I think we met in 2020.
Yeah.
Didn't we?
Yep. Yeah. So it was shortly after that. It was, I think, Bliss, right? Down at around Fort Bliss.
Yeah. You were there. We met at that outlaw steel match, that falling steel match at Copper's Cove right off
Yeah,
post.
yeah.
Like literally right off post. Like training areas are like down the street.
Yeah. So, and that was something that a lot of the instructors there do is if it's a 2-day block or a 2-week block of instruction. So over the weekend, we typically bring guns and ammo and look for local matches. So I've kind of had the privilege to shoot all over the place at different local matches. Washington State, Fort Bliss, where I met you. I've even shot out in Hawaii, which was pretty cool. But yeah, I've had the ability to shoot all over the place. And then obviously I invest a lot of time into doing that on my free time. So I've shot, big matches all over the country.
Yeah, you've got a pretty good record at majors, I think, if I remember correctly. Like you definitely hold your own, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think best I ever did at USPSA Nationals was top 20 or top 15, I think. I've done pretty well top 5s, top 3s at state matches, pretty good at some area matches. So yeah, I work pretty hard at it and kind of dedicated my life to, gunfighting and shooting guns. So but yeah, I started hitting the competitive scene really heavy, probably 12 years ago. So the problem is I like shooting everything. I shoot a little bit of PRS, some quantified performance. And if you're not familiar with that, that's more gas gun oriented. So it's like a little bit more favorable targets. And I think it's a little bit more applicable to duty type rigs. So it's kind of run what you brung. And guys that, have duty or patrol rifles, they can go out there and do just fine at QP matches. So
yeah, and that's something like even in group, right, dude? Like I've done the long range stuff when it was needed for me to do it.
yeah,
but like that just wasn't my thing. You know what I mean? Like I enjoy it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There's something really cool about making a shot from a hell of a long way away, and that is neat. But I like running around and shooting stuff, and I just never really had the time to do both.
Yeah.
So I kind of did the thing I liked the most.
Yeah,
But
I think it's that opportunity cost, where you start following another discipline or working on another platform, and you start kind of falling off on the other one. So, but yeah, short range, that's what keeps me interested because it's so challenging. And I think, as pistol is so perishable. So I really focus on the pistol. I'm probably way more pistol heavy than carbine or long gun for sure, but I definitely enjoy it. And then we've also had a great opportunity as far as instructor development there at AMU. We've gone to Accuracy First and Hat Creek, a couple. We've actually trained with Frank, so mutual friend of ours, Frank Proctor. Great dude, great instructor, really good shooter. So we've had some really good opportunities as far as that goes to try to gain and get more knowledge and then spread that to the rest of the force.
And I have a theory, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this about pistol versus carbine, right? Here's my theory. And this obviously does not apply to this is more like what I would consider like urban distance. Carbine, mount CQB distance, right?
Yep.
Things get different when you're talking about like a true infantry range engagement or precision stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But for those ranges, for like 100 yards and in, I really feel like as long as I do just enough work with a carbine to make sure my manipulations are good and to make sure I'm still like kind of familiar with it, I can put all my effort into the pistol and I'll still get better at the carbine.
Yeah.
I feel like,
So I'm sure you follow Ben Stoger, right? Or Stager,
Yeah.
how you pronounce it. But he put that book out. Well, he had some input in it, the Adaptive Carbine book with Joel Park, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that just goes to show it's like a really, really good pistol shooter can transition over rifle in a very, very short period of time and do pretty good, especially at those short ranges that you're talking about. So, but yeah, I agree 100%. I agree with you.
And I think that's why I don't think we really thought about it in group, but like in group, I mean, and like I said, we're talking about for CQB ranges, mount CQB kind of ranges, right? Your skill with a pistol was always prized more than your skill at that range with a rifle. And I don't think we really thought about why.
Mhm.
I think we just thought about, well, the pistol's harder. But I think when you think about it that way, I think it kind of makes sense, because you'll get better at shooting at those ranges with a carbine by working on your pistol, because it is so much harder.
Yeah.
Like how many guys you know that are big Army guys or even regiment guys that can run a rifle, but you put a pistol in their hand and it just isn't the same.
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of odd too, even and you see it in group as well, but regiment, I mean, there's some guys that don't carry, pistols at all still, which kind of blows my mind. And obviously, like if you're doing a 5K offset, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, all these ounces are turned into pounds, and I don't want to have to carry that much weight. Plus you're usually rolling out with a whole platoon worth of guys. So hopefully you're never going to need your sidearm, but I always did as a backup, just in case. I always thought it was worth it. So.
Yeah. And I really do think there's something to that too. Like if you put a significant amount of effort into getting better with a pistol, it'll only make you better with a carbine, as long as you do enough to stay familiar and those manipulations, moving with it, reloading it, all that stuff, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think that's the case. I think it's kind of the secret sauce, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, man, I'm stoked about your new gig, man. Tell me about the new gig. What exactly are you going to be doing? I mean, obviously you're running like the USPSA guys. Like what are your duties?
Actually, the action team encompasses the disciplines of USPSA, different divisions within USPSA, 3-gun, and then precision rifle as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, and it's kind of interesting because, so we've got John Wydell. He's only 21, and he won 22 and 23 USPSA multi-gun nationals. And, I think he did the first one, not even being there at the unit within a year. Then there's Nate Staskowitz. He's another 3-gunner. He's done very, very well for himself in his division in 3-gun. He won. It was 23 and 24, I believe, for USPSA multi-gun. And then Aaron Edens, big USPSA shooter. Yep. And then he won the 22 USPSA race gun nationals. Jacob Hetherington, he's won, I mean, probably that could take a whole nother podcast. He's won so many titles for limited and iron sights. And then Cale Harmon, he's a big PRS shooter. He's done very, very well for himself. He won the 2023 Golden Bullet. So that's the overall series finale, and then the points series overall. So, and then what's kind of interesting about Cale, I'm sure you've seen this, like some really, really great shooters are not great instructors. They just can't tell you, how they got there or how they did certain things. But Cale, he has trained since 22. He has trained 23 teams that have placed top 10 at IPSC, the International Sniper Competition.
Okay.
And USASOC. So 23 teams within the top 10 from 22. Yeah. From 22 on. That's
pretty stout.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, because I think it's impressive just based on a testament to how well he can instruct, but also the fact that he's training that many folks and also trying to train himself in order to, win all these big PRS matches. So he's done very, very well. And then Tyler Payne, he's another big PRS shooter. He's the assistant team chief for the action shooting team. So, and he won a Golden Bullet back in 2016, I believe. So very, very accomplished shooter. But I mean, as you know, all the all-time greats came out of that team. Casey Eusebio, Max Michel, Danny Horner, Shane Coley, super big names. So Yeah,
Yeah, no,
pretty exciting.
it's a pressure cooker for high level action shooters for sure, without
Yeah.
a doubt. And I think a lot of people don't even realize, like for a while, my son was interested in shooting, and I was kind of, because I was aware of it, and I was kind of putting the idea in his head. He moved on to other things, and that's fine. But like, if you're young and you're into this stuff, that's the way to go if you can get there.
Yeah.
Like if you can do well enough in majors to get in to the AMU, like that, you're setting yourself up as a competitive shooter for as long as you want to do it, really, which is pretty damn cool.
Yeah, because kind of how the unit works is typically they try to recruit guys out of the Army, or outside of the Army, I should say, and they convince them to join the Army. And typically they have a choice of what MOS they want to pursue. And then a lot of the guys pick 11 Bravo because it's usually the shortest, going through basic training and then OSUT. And then they end up at the unit a lot quicker. So they get orders cut straight to AMU, and then they come here and then they shoot, and some guys retire out of here.
Yeah.
So
yeah, file that as another one of the incredibly cool things you can do in the military that nobody told me about when I was a kid.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I know.
Without a doubt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if you told me 10, 12 years ago when I started competitive shooting that I'd be here as the team chief for the action shooting team, I wouldn't have believed it. So it's a pretty great experience. I'm pretty excited about it. So
no, it's really cool, man. I'm really excited for you. Like that's going to be just, and I think you're going to be great for the team too. You know what I mean? Because you're a competitor, you take it seriously, you're really good at it. You put a lot of work into it. You know what it feels like,
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest. I'm not as good as some of those guys on the team for sure. So,
but I don't think, I mean,
yeah.
And don't sell yourself short. You're really good. But I also think that you don't have to be the next coming of KCU CBO to be the guy in charge either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to understand it well enough to kind of have that mentoring role and get things out of their way administratively too.
Yeah.
And that matters, man.
Yeah, I think every good leader, that should be their goal. Just remove barriers for training and to help mentor them. So yeah.
So I want to segue a little bit into what your job with the AMU was.
Yep.
Because, and granted, like, I'm old, right? So this probably wasn't even a thing before I went to group, but I don't remember there being a training side to the AMU when I was young. You know what I'm saying? And it probably didn't exist, I would imagine.
So,
and like and this kind of, we've talked about this a lot, and this is going to kind of lead into that, is the value, the training value people can get from competition style shooting that applies to people that have to shoot in combat. And like the fact that the Army's doing that, and like I said, I don't know how long it's happened, because once I went to selection, I wouldn't have really known about it anyway, because we handle that stuff in-house.
Yep.
But like, how long has the EMU been doing that? And like, tell me about the ins and outs of it. Like, we've talked about it, but tell my listeners about how it works.
Oh man. All right. So I'll give you the spiel. I'll give you the rundown. Okay.
The spiel. All right.
Yeah.
You got to do the knife hand though. You got to knife hand the world while you give me the spiel.
No, we don't do that here. So the Army Marksmanship unit was started in 1956 by Eisenhower, more as a propaganda tool against the Russians to show the world on an international stage that we had better shooters in the U.S. Army. So, and that kind of morphed into more of a recruiting tool, because we actually fall under USAREC, which is kind of an interesting dynamic. But part of that is our job is lethality. So training soldiers across the force, and then marketing and accessions. But within the unit, there's a few competitive teams. So there's shotgun, which compete at the Olympic level in trap and skeet. There's international rifle. So they do small bore. They also compete on the Olympic level. There's service pistol, service rifle, and then the action team that I run now, and then the instructor training group. and their sole purpose is to just travel to different military installations and provide marksmanship training to units. So, and then there's also the ballistics room, and they do a lot of load development and ballistic testing for the military. And then there's also the customs firearms shop. So they do a lot of prototyping and testing for the Army as well. So that's the rundown.
More like precision systems, like sniper systems and stuff, or
all the above. Yeah, all of the above. Yeah, some of the stuff I obviously can't talk about, but
of course,
they do a lot. They've got their hands in a lot of different pies all across the Army. So yeah, they do a lot of work. So kind of to go into my previous job within the unit as an instructor for the instructor training group, what's kind of impressive is that's only a team of 10 guys. And last year, I think our numbers, we trained nearly 4,000 soldiers. So yeah, and just to put it into perspective, last year when I was still on the team, I was on the road 220 days out of the year. So it's pretty significant. It's a lot. All the guys there work super, super hard, and I think they know the value of what they're bringing to the military and the importance of it. So they work really, really hard to ensure that those guys are getting the best training that they can.
And when you run the training for the units, and mostly like combat arms units, I'm assuming, but probably not all, I would imagine.
Yeah, not all, but primarily, yeah. So it's I would say 70% of the training that we provided was for conventional units, maybe a little less, but we train a lot of ODAs, a lot of guys from regiment, some tier 1 units. And then Action does some of that as well. So they do a lot of training or provide a lot of training as well.
Now, do you like, how can I figure out how to put this? Is the training designed around just like more conventional Army marksmanship stuff, but at a higher level? Or do you get to put in the input from like the action shooting stuff and how that carries across and benefits?
Yeah. So
and you know where I'm going with this too. We're gonna talk about the white paper in a second.
Yeah. So that's all right. That's a good question. So it's kind of interesting because how we kind of present it is we provide non-standard training. So we have some like turnkey products, lesson plans that we can provide units. But if a unit approaches us and they say, hey, we're going down to Central America and most of it's low vis, we can do concealed carry training. So it's kind of interesting that way. We do everything small arms as well, like up to sniper systems. And so it allows us the flexibility to get to a unit, kind of see where they're at. And typically when we get on the ground, we try to run some sort of initial qualification just to kind of get a feel for where their proficiency is at. And then we go from there. So, and we do provide lesson plans just so units kind of can forecast ammo and things like that. But yeah, a lot of the time we'll get on the ground and end up changing lesson plans, like kind of on the fly sometimes.
Yeah, that never happens in group when you're training somebody. Never, not at all. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good to be flexible, but yeah, that's why the instructors there, they have to be pretty proficient at everything, and then be well-rounded. Yeah, and they have to be very, very good at kind of reacting to contact and making some changes very, very quickly. So most of the guys there at the instructor group, I think we've got one E6. All of them are E7s, and they're post KD time complete. So they've got a lot of experience in the Army. So big changes or issues with ranges and things like that don't really phase them. They can make those decisions very, very quickly on the fly.
So I've got kind of it's not really a side note because it pertains to what we're talking about, but one of the big arguments on the internet right now is hit factor training versus part-time training for institutional stuff. And, they're mainly talking about law enforcement when they talk about it. And
I think I saw that I think I saw that write up that you're talking about, it, the exact same one.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure
So
you're talking about, yeah.
yeah. So what are your thoughts on this, right? As far, and I have my own, but I'm kind of thinking, well, I want to hear what you have to say
Okay.
first.
So I think the big thing there, right? Especially if you're training big agencies, it's throughput. There's always going to be a problem with throughput. So, but you always need to have a marksmanship standard attached to something and a time standard attached to it to really
Yeah.
get some sort of quantifiable data out of it. So that's my opinion. I really do think that. And I think it's kind of funny because I listened to the Frank Proctor podcast that you did with him, and something that really drove me to competitive shooting was something Frank was saying, and it was everything is quantifiable. You can look
Yeah.
at your time, you can look at your hits and your accuracy, and then with Practice Score Competitor, that app, you can really break stuff down and really analyze it and really drill down on that stuff. And you can even look at mistakes that you made and kind of figure out how much did that cost me, time wise. So, and then the other aspect of it is you're racked and stacked against your peers. So you can really look at how you stack up against everybody else.
And there's no, I mean, obviously there is an upper limit. There's an upper limit to human performance, I'm sure, but I don't think we've found it yet. You know what I'm saying? So like you can always be a little faster and a little more accurate until you max that out. And
what's the name of your podcast and where is that from?
Miyamoto Musashi, The Way Is in Training.
Yep. Yeah. The pursuit of excellence, but never perfection.
Yeah, it's never going to be perfection, but it can always be a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I love that about the hit factor. And even like Time Plus, like IDPA, it's still there. It's just a little bit different,
Yeah.
And I just love the fact that there is no ceiling apart from what you're genetically capable of, like whatever your maximum human performance is. And it's so hard to reach that because you can always be a little more efficient, right? You can always make it a little bit, you can always have a lower rate of error, make fewer mistakes. So you can keep getting better and better. And I think that's something that people lose sight of with a lot of the more conventional part-time training, where the part-times are pretty generous and the marksmanship standards are pretty generous. And there's no, like, people think they've maxed out and they really aren't even close. The flip side, like you said, though, is I think logistically, like for a while I was a firearms instructor for recruits on Chicago PD, when I was in 20th group part-time, right? And there is no way I could have run hit factor stuff for that. Like I just couldn't have. There was too many people trying to get through and they weren't at a high enough skill level. And logistically, it would have just been more difficult than I had time for.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great way for like SWAT teams and ODAs and, like there, I think the juice is worth the squeeze there, I think. There, see, we settled the internet's argument right there. We got the answer. The answer is both.
Yeah. So I think my biggest goal as an instructor was to influence guys enough that they would pursue that sort of training or competitive shooting on their own.
Yeah.
And somehow you had to impart that value upon them enough where they would do that. And because otherwise, institutionally, they're not going to get the reps. They're not going to get the intensity that's required, I don't think, to get them to the level that they need. So they need to be able to pursue that on their own. And you got to try to get them there somehow, bring the horse to water.
Yeah. Well, and that was a big motivation, honestly, behind me starting my company when I retired. And things are better now, but 5 years ago, competitive shooting was not as popular with law enforcement and military as it is now.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Which I think is a huge benefit.
That?
It's a huge benefit for those guys.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's something you can do on your own time, that it's fun and it's cost effective. I mean, you don't spend that much for a local match.
No.
A little bit of gas, lunch, a little bit of ammo, and $20 to $30 entrance fee.
Well, I
Right?
try to
That's a huge amount of training value for the money right there.
Yeah, and I try to convince the Army guys this way as well, where I tell them that range control is not involved. So you just show up, you pay your $20, you shoot your match, and you go home. You don't need to deal with range control or any weird stuff, and you don't have to.
You don't have 100% accountability on brass.
No.
Yeah.
Just leave it where it lays and go home. So,
honestly, that might be the biggest selling point right there for most guys.
Yeah.
So tell me about the white paper, man. Let's tell the listeners about it.
Okay. Yeah. So I wrote a paper a while back on the benefits of competitive shooting for the warfighter, mostly combat arms, and then law enforcement. So it kind of breaks down, my personal opinions on it. And then obviously a white paper shouldn't really do that, but, have a lot of opinions in it. But basically I kind of outlined why the reps are super, super important, and kind of expand upon that a little bit. And then why it's important for those guys to get reps under pressure, especially. So, we could break some of it down and get down into some detail on it, but
let's talk about the pressure thing, because I think a lot of people underestimate the pressure of a match.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you've been to combat. You probably feel I would if I was a betting man, I would be willing to bet a really nice cigar and a bottle of whiskey that you feel the same way about this I do. I was never as nervous in the real thing as I am in a match.
No.
Never. Not even close.
No.
Like the amount of stress the match puts on you is way above what the real thing puts on you, I think.
Yep. Well, the importance, I think, is you need to conduct the repetitions, and you know this. I think you've talked about it on previous podcasts, but you need to conduct those repetitions at a conscious level so many times that they become subconscious, and you need to do that under stress in order to realistically replicate combat scenarios, or in the Leo world, in a officer involved shooting type scenario.
Yeah, and people complain that it's not tactical, but I don't think that's the issue. Like, no. It's not meant to be a scenario. It's meant to be a shooting drill that you're doing for a score.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite quotes about that is from Mike Pannone, actually, where he says, if you can't tell the difference between a cardboard target that's not shooting back at you and someone who is, you have bigger problems than I can fix in a 2-day class.
Yep. Well, I think something else, it's actually a quote from Mike, is he said there's no such thing as tactical shooting. The application of shooting can be tactical in nature, but there's no such thing. Shooting is shooting. So just the way you apply it can be tactical in nature. Yeah. So for example, like a fix and a finish, and then maneuver on an element, something like that can be tactical, and the way you apply it. But
that's not the shooting piece. The shooting piece is just the shooting piece. Yeah. No. Frank says something really good about that too, where he says that, by the definition of tactics, it actually is tactical. It's just they're not the same tactics you would use in conflict.
Mm-hmm.
A tactic is a set of techniques used to accomplish a certain goal in a certain way, right? You're doing that. You're trying to accomplish the goal of being as fast and accurate as you can be. And you're employing tactics to do that. They're just different tactics than you would use in a fight.
Yep.
So you're still going through that decision-making process. You're still learning to follow your plan under stress.
Yeah. Yep. So have you looked into like sports psychology a ton? I'm sure you have, right? So do you know what cognitive channels are by any chance?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and when I first started this competitive shooting journey, I mean, I was like so hungry. I read absolutely every book that I could that was competitive shooting related. I read all the Lanny Basham, all the Lanny Basham stuff. I read Brian Enos, Beyond Fundamentals. That was a really, really good book.
I love that book, Enos, because every time you come back to it, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
You learn something different every time you read it.
Yeah. And that actually was, that was one of those books that I read, and directly after that, I started breaking through this plateau that I had had for a long time. And I'm not really sure why, this far along now, but yeah, that book definitely changed my thought process and kind of how I looked at shooting. So that was a really, really big one for me. But the cognitive channel thing is so important because it has to do with the ability or the mental bandwidth that you have to solve tactical problems.
Yep.
So, and kind of how I put competitive shooting in the most simplistic explanation or description is it's problem solving with your gun. That's all it is.
And you're building that bandwidth, even if you're going to use it in a different way.
Yep.
That's an attribute, right? That's not a tactic. That bandwidth is an attribute. Like in my classes, I tell people it's like you're putting a bigger RAM in your laptop.
Yep.
So it can run more stuff and run it faster.
Yeah. So kind of how I explain that is, doing the reps opens up the bandwidth, but it liberates attention. And so instead of thinking, how do I do this? It's more, what should I do with this? And that's kind of how I explain the cognitive channels and the mental bandwidth and why that's so important to guys that carry guns for a living.
Well, think about guys in the shoot house, right?
Yeah.
Like you'll see a guy who's new in the shoot house and he's a newer shooter and his shooting isn't there yet. His CQB is going to suck. I don't care how athletic he is. I don't care how smart he is. I don't care how good he is at handling stress. He's thinking about the shooting piece and his brain is clogged up with that. He can't pay attention to the bigger tactical situation because he's not shooting subconsciously yet, right? Yeah. And that's why, like, it's not like you have to be a GM to be good at CQB, but your shooting's got to be subconscious.
Yep.
It's got to be good enough subconscious,
Yeah, the OBE, overwhelmed by events.
Yep.
Yeah, you see it all the time when guys don't have those weapons manipulation or the manual alarms down enough, where they're thinking about the gun instead of the tactical problem and where they need to be in a stack or the house and whatnot. So yeah, that's the biggest benefit I think I see to competitive shooting. All that stuff becomes second nature. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen, a malfunction and then corrected it almost instinctively without thinking about it, and then it doesn't derail your stage plan because you've seen it enough times.
Well, and look at the flip side, right? Look at, my other former profession, law enforcement. And I'm not speaking ill of people who haven't been properly trained and not exposed to proper training, because that's not their fault. Mm-hmm. But you see it all the time in body cam videos. Somebody doesn't have a good grip on the gun, so they induce a malfunction and a shooter error. Mm-hmm. And then they can't fix it. Mm-hmm. Like you see it all the time. It takes them forever to fix it because it's not a subconscious task for them.
No.
They're trying to think through it and they're getting it wrong because they're stressed out and somebody's shooting at them. How much better could they handle that situation if their grip was done at a subconscious level of competent skill?
Yep.
And if the malfunction still happened, if they responded automatically, like you said, and just cleared it.
Yep.
It would be a huge difference in their survivability right there.
Yeah. And I tell guys, while I'm training them all the time, like if I could pay you money to go shoot a match, I would do it. If I could give you the gun, give you the ammo, pay your match fees and pay you to go do it, as a gunfighter, it's hugely beneficial. And so much so that I would do that if I had the financial ability to do so.
Maybe we should send a message on X to Elon Musk, see if he'll fund it for you.
Yeah, all that money they're saving with Doge, maybe we could. Yeah, maybe they
probably could.
Yeah.
Oh man, now this is good stuff. And like, it's come so far in the last 5-10 years. And that really makes me feel good, that
Yep.
people in both law enforcement and military are taking it a lot. I don't want to say more seriously, but they're understanding the value of
Yeah.
competition style shooting to a much higher degree. Because I really do think it's like, just look at it this way. Do you know anyone who is a masterclass shooter or better who doesn't compete? I don't care what their background is.
No, I
No,
don't. No,
I don't think I've ever met one.
no.
Right. Now, there are guys in certain units that are probably high A, because they put a lot of work in.
Mhm.
But they also put a lot of work in training like competitive shooters because they had competition guys come in to teach them.
Yep.
But I've never personally met somebody who's M class or better who hasn't put in the time in matches.
No. Now it's the exception, but there's some guys that are just innately, skilled, or
Yeah.
so fast, but that's the exception. I've only seen maybe a couple guys, over the past 15 years that were like that, and one of them in particular, now he's competing. And I think within his first year, he was already M class, in limited optics. Within the first year, he started competing.
Oh yeah, there's certainly people that have the innate ability to get there a lot faster, without a doubt.
Yeah.
There's people that have a level of talent that I could only dream of having, like people that they just get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to say his name now because now he's going to know who it is. And I'm not going to give him that credit.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, here's another one for you. Since you're on the mill side, civilian defensive shooters, what would you give them? Not even law enforcement, right? Because LE I kind of treat as almost like there's enough similarities to mill, especially on the training side of things, that it can be a very close carryover, right? But a defensive shooter, somebody who carries to defend themselves and their family, what advice would you give them based on your experience in the AMU?
Well, train with what you have. Train with what you have, enough to feel comfortable with it, for sure. I think you brought this statistic up in a previous podcast, but the 3 to 5 seconds, 3 to 5 rounds, 3 to 5 yards, that's the statistic for most gunfights. And so if you can train and be pretty proficient at that, then you should be feeling pretty good about yourself and the level in which you can protect your family or yourself. So, and practice with your carry conceal gun and your carry conceal rig. And I don't think you need to be, an M class shooter to be doing that. So just get to the range a little bit, a couple times a month, nothing crazy. And even dry fire, you can get a lot out of dry fire, getting those reps, where you can get to a pretty proficient level without actually having to shoot rounds.
Yeah, I think certainly a level of base competence for defending yourself.
Yeah.
It's the average thing you're going to find.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like, I kind of think, people don't need to be an M. So, and I stole this, I didn't come up with this, but my personal kind of thought on it is B class is like a black belt.
Yep.
Like if you're B class, you've got enough hard skills to be able to fight pretty good.
Yeah.
If you can do everything else well too, you're going to be, head and shoulders above anybody you're likely to encounter at all.
And then I think probably the hardest classification to get out of was probably B into A class, going from B to A class. Because that A class is so deep, and there are so many great shooters that are trying to level up to M class, and most realistically they're probably M class shooters, but they just haven't made it M class yet. So I think trying to get into A class and then from there into M class, those are probably the hardest divisions, I think. But I think you're right. That's a really, really great level of proficiency. And for a defensive shooter, I think that's kind of right where you need to be.
Yeah, no, I agree with you a lot. And it's something that I don't want to say it's easy to achieve, because that's really not the case. It's like a black belt's not easy to achieve either, but it's achievable.
Yes.
if you have limited time, you have injuries, if you're older, it is achievable. It can be done, right? And I mean, think about it, like skill with a pistol worldwide, out of everybody that has a pistol, like you're in the top, fraction of a percent of pistol shooters as a B-class shooter. Like, I mean, you're not likely to run into someone who's going to have a higher skill level at running the gun than that.
No.
I don't think.
No.
Because if they're out there, they're probably on the side of the good guys.
Yeah. We would hope.
We would hope. Yeah. Yeah. At least what they believe the side of the good guys is.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So I've had the opportunity to train with Christian Saylor, and then Travis Tomasi. And this is a term that he kind of had. And honestly, I didn't think it was like a real word. So I kind of had to do some research, but velocitization. Have you ever heard of that?
I have. Yeah. And it's kind of like, I think, at least if I'm understanding what you're meaning, the way I use the word, it's kind of like when you drive on the highway at 80 miles an hour for 3 or 4 hours and you take the off ramp and all of a sudden you're going 35 and it feels like you're not even moving.
Yep. Yeah. And that's like, that was his analogy. So the driving analogy, but it's the phenomenon where people are desensitized to speed. So, and that's super important for, from the gunfighting aspect, where a lot of these guys just don't understand the true meaning of that. And on the other side, on the flip side too, if they're just not accustomed to shooting at speed, they're just not processing fast enough either. So I think the only way to do that in a training environment is, one, you kind of show them what it means. So you can get on the clock and then demo it. And then if you have the convenience of having reactive targetry, so turning targetry, and then you put a par time on it. So you only have a very, very short time to react to those targets once they turn, and then they turn away. And that's another really, really good one. And then par times on a shot timer. So have you ever heard the term gunfighter math before?
Yes.
Okay. So, and that's something we usually teach and kind of explain in our short range marksmanship courses, but we break it down. So, every reaction and action is 0.25, somewhere in there. So, because I mean, what the standard is for a draw to first shot with a pistol. Everyone says, well, 1.5. And then, we're like, okay, why? Why is it 1.5? Why should that be the standard? And so when you break it down mathematically by, 0.25, quarter of a second at a time, it ends up being, so you recognize there's a threat, that's about 0.25. You move your firing hand to the pistol grip, that's another 0.25. You break retention, that's another 0.25. You build your two-handed grip, that's another 0.25. You present the gun, that's another 0.25, and gain a sight picture, break the shot, 0.25. Altogether, cumulatively, that's about 1.5. And what's kind of interesting about that is you can kind of break that down into almost every weapon manipulation you do. So if you really, really wanted to drill down on some of this stuff, where it's even like, a primary to secondary transition, you can break all that stuff down mathematically and really analyze it and see where you're losing time. So, but yeah, 1.5 is usually the answer, but why are guys able to do it faster than that? Well, they're doing two things at once, and then obviously their reaction time is a lot faster as well. So, and that's the big one I see, or they're just not being efficient with their movements. So
yeah,
they're getting that pistol, they're getting that firing hand on their pistol grip, and they're not moving their support hand at the same time. It's a big loss of time right there. And so it's really, really beneficial to have a buddy looking at you or watching you, and then kind of telling you like, hey, you're not doing this or that, or even filming yourself if you're on the range by yourself, filming it and then kind of seeing where you're losing those seconds, and then not being really efficient with your economy of motion and your movement.
And I think this is important. Like I I've actually had similar conversations with a lot of people on the podcast.
Mhm.
And so like, let's take splits as an example, right?
Yep.
And we'll take splits as an example from the real world side of things, not the competitive side of things. And I'll come back to the competitive side in a second and
Okay.
explain how it factors in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So except for certain outlier situations, you're probably not ever going to need or even want to split faster than 0.25 in a gunfight. I mean, there are outliers, but chances are with a pistol, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
For a couple reasons. One is you have the ability to make a decision between shots.
Mhm.
Like if you're ripping a bill drill and you're Isaac Lockwood and your splits are 11s, you may not be able to stop between one shot to the next, you know, and it might be time to stop, right? So that's part of it. Part of it is that the shooting is very controllable if you've done the right things, which I'll get back. I think you'll like this. I'm gonna circle back around to that too.
Okay.
Right. So, but we see guys on body cam videos splitting at 0.25 and they have horrible hit ratios and they're obviously not making decisions because they're backing up in a panic and malfunctioning and inducing malfunctions in the gun, right?
Mhm.
It's because for them 0.25 is faster than they can process the information because they have not done the oh god damn it, velocitization. Yeah, I sounded like Anchorman. I sound like Anchorman for a second there, right?
Yeah, I didn't have a teleprompter. There's that, and then the FBI did this big study actually on officer involved shootings, and what they found was your shot size, your group size typically doubles under stress compared to what you can do and what you're capable of on the range. So typically that's why we have guys trained to a very, very tight accuracy standard on the range. But at the same time, you need to be able to push it. And I think you've probably heard this too, accuracy is final. Well, what exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about a very, very fast Alpha Charlie? Because if I'm in a gunfight with somebody that can draw their pistol in 1.2 seconds and get an Alpha Charlie hit on me, but I take a second and a half to draw my pistol and get two alphas, well, guess what? I'm getting shot first,
Yeah.
So, and then I think the other thing to kind of think about on that one too, and really, I think that's the most important thing with competitive shooting is you need to make that conscious connection with what you're doing downrange. And so, if you're very, very fast at throwing Alpha Charlies, that's probably acceptable if there's a multi-target engagement. And really, I'm just trying to fix them in place or anchor them in place. I'm going very, very fast, Alpha Charlie, all the way across the array. And then I'm coming back through on a secondary sector sweep and cleaning it up afterwards. But I need to incapacitate them quickly enough if it's a multi-target engagement.
Yeah. And I think too, like, first off, like, I love how people use the accuracy is final. Speed is fine, but accuracy is final. But they never tell you the rest of the quote from Earp.
Yeah.
And the rest of the quote says that you have to learn to move as fast as your muscles are capable of. Because what he means is that, yes, you have to be accurate, but you got to be accurate fast.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
He's saying that speed for the purpose of just making gun smoke and spent brass is worthless. And he's not wrong, right?
Which is kind of what I see too. If you go shoot majors, like big major matches or like area matches, I think there's a common misconception with USPSA where it's more weighted for time as opposed to accuracy, and it is not true, because if you're trying to compete and stay competitive at a very, very high level, those guys are very accurate and they're very, very fast. So if you're fast and you're just squirting bullets all over the place, you're not going to be competitive with them whatsoever.
Well, like look at Graffel. What was his alpha count at the last world shoot?
I don't remember. It was extremely high though.
He had like, I think, 1 delta the whole match and no misses.
Yeah. I think this, and I don't know if this is accurate. I can't remember. I have to look at the results. I think this last USPSA Nationals, Christian dropped like maybe 3 deltas or something like that. It was pretty
Yeah.
impressive.
Well, that kid's an impressive kid. Talking about guys that have a huge amount of natural talent and the work ethic.
Yeah.
Like he's going to go places. He will probably be spoken of with the same reverence we speak of Grafel now in 10 years, I bet.
Probably. Yeah. Because, 1 year he won all area matches, every single one of them, and then won nationals. And I don't think anybody's done that ever.
Yeah. No, and he's so young too, still.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's older now, but he's still just in his 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's going to go places for sure. And that's the thing actually that impresses me about him the most. Not that he's not really fast, because he is, but how accurate at that speed he is.
Yeah, a lot of those guys, like all the super squad guys, they're all the same. Or it's kind of interesting because some of them almost have a different approach or kind of a different shooting style or flavor. If you look at KC, and I think it's just based on how much experience he has shooting, steel and steel challenge. And I've never seen somebody shoot steel the way he can shoot steel. Like his draw to first shot on steel is absolutely insane. I think it's probably 0.7s somewhere in there, and then his transitions are absolutely crazy insane as well. But and he shoots paper pretty damn fast. But I think steel, that's like where he really, really shines. If there's like a steel heavy match, he kind of starts pulling away on some guys on those stages for sure.
So going back to Grafel, because I think this ties into something you were saying a second ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talking about see if I can say it right this time and not sound like Carell from Anchorman. Velocitization.
Yes. There you go.
Yes. I got all the syllables in that time. So I'm sure you've watched his practice videos that he throws up.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Just insane how fast he's shooting. Just like insane, just blistering splits on alpha, A zone only swingers at 25 yards and all this other stuff. But then you watch him shoot in a match, and I'm not saying he's not incredibly fast, because he is, but it is obvious that he's doing everything under complete control.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and then something I've noticed with his training is it's a lot higher volume strings of fire typically than a lot of other people. So he'll do 20, 30 round strings of fire for a drill, and typically you don't see that. A lot of shooters here in the US are doing 10, 15 round strings tops, for a specific drill. And he's usually doing 20 or 30. And I'm not sure what the theory is behind that, but I'm sure he has something.
I think in general he's a high round count guy. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
That's what I've read.
Yeah.
And I wonder if maybe, because I've been kind of geeking out on the whole interleaving randomization concepts for training lately.
Yep.
And he's a big guy, a big proponent of that for the shooting world. And I think it probably ties into that, him scaling the complexity up as he progresses.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely, if I had to guess. I mean, obviously I am not Eric Grafel, nor will I ever be. but that's my guess. So I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to say. I do know he has the capability to look at specific stages and be like, I can drop 1 Charlie on this as long as I shoot it this fast. He's that switched on. He kind of knows. He's more analytical about it.
He does the math. He does the hit factor math for everything. Yeah.
And I'll do it down to a certain extent, where I look at stage values. I'll look at the point value on a specific stage. Or one big thing is I'll look at risk. So let's say you have a 10 target stage and you have 1 no shoot on that stage. Well, that's 10% of the stage value in penalties if you hit that 1 time. So I'll look at those a lot more carefully, and I'll shoot those with a lot more respect and a refined sight picture. And I'll try to invest a little bit more time, like looking at that portion of the stage and then trying to mentally visualize what my sight picture needs to look like on that stage. So, because I mean, if you really think about it too, if let's say you throw a miss on that, that's a 10-point penalty. And if you don't make it up, or if you throw a hit on the no shoot, right, that's a 10-point penalty, but you have the miss as well. Now that's another 10-point penalty, but you also didn't pick up the 5-point alpha that you should have got. Now you're down 25 points on a 100-point stage. That's 25% of the stage value right there.
See, I like that concept a lot. And that kind of ties into a way I've always kind of thought about shooting for the real world, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to talk about the difficulty of the shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's just the difficulty. I think it's the difficulty and the risk.
Yep.
Some targets are low difficulty, but high risk. Some targets are both, high risk, high difficulty.
Yep.
Some targets are high difficulty, no risk, or, no risk, no difficulty. Like, it's you and a guy and there's a brick wall behind him. There's nobody else around and he's 5 yards away. Right. I mean, you can blaze on that.
When you were kind of back on the teams, did they in like Cephalic or like pre-Sephardic, did they ever talk about engagement criteria or shooter solution? Yeah. So, size of the target, distance of the target, and then your capability as a shooter. But I always added risk in there.
Yeah.
Well. So because
what is the penalty for me making a mistake?
Oh yeah.
Is the penalty a makeup shot or is the penalty I just shot the hostage?
Yeah. Yep.
So and that's
the risk considerations, especially in those scenarios that you're talking about. It's like, so I consider like low percentage shots. Are there civilians? Is there obstacle clearance to consider, especially when you're shooting a carbine and you have to take into consideration mechanical offset? Do I have the potential to hit some sort of barricade or barrier and then send an errant round who knows where? So those sort of things, that's why I add risk in there, and then I kind of talk about it as well, because that stuff definitely needs to be applicable to the real world.
Yeah, and I think that's something because I like what you're saying about the match situation, right? Because I've always thought of the risk of the targets. Like, obviously, I'm not gonna shoot a no shoot the same way I'm going to shoot a hardcover tuxedo.
No.
You know what I mean? Because I can just make up the shot on the tuxedo, but the no shoot, I lose the points no matter what, even if I make it up, right?
Yep.
But what you're saying is you're looking at the proportion of the points for the stage and the risk involved in that.
Yep.
Yeah. So you just gave me some homework. Now I got to go do some math problems for my next match.
Yep. Yeah. Especially, and obviously, like, you have to look at it from this perspective too. Like, you'll see somebody bomb a stage and it ruins the rest of their match. So for one, like, and I'm sure what the fixed mindset is versus the growth mindset. Mistakes are going to happen, and in order to progress and get better, I think some guys understand that, and they have a easy way of kind of moving on. But the other thing is you have to kind of think about match points overall. So if you consistently shoot pretty good and you're collecting 90% of those points against the winners on those stages, and you might bomb one, that's okay. You still will place fairly high on that match. So the way I kind of look at it is like, if it's a small stage and a low point value, really, especially if you made a mistake on that stage, it doesn't really matter that much in the grand scheme of overall points on the match. So, because you'll see a guy bomb like a 30 or 40 point stage, and it just ruins the rest of his match, when in actuality, like, he could still place pretty high if he just kind of moved on, compartmentalized that, and then, focused on the next stage.
I will never forget what one of my mentors in the military told me once, and that was to fail quickly.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to fail. So when you fail, just fail quickly and move on. Like, get it, fix it.
Mm-hmm.
You already failed. Fix it and move on.
Yep.
Right. And I think, and this kind of ties into going back to talking about strategy and tactics, right? Because this is still a strategic way of looking at the match. It's still, what are my tactics on this stage? We're not talking about the same tactics we talk about for hostage rescue, but we're talking about tactics nonetheless, right? It's a different, you're looking for a different desired outcome, and your parameters are different, but you're still thinking that way, right? And I really like a couple of things you just said, and I'm gonna start playing around with that in my matches, not only because I think it'll make me perform better in the matches, but also because, and this is one of the other benefits from competition, right? The more I think about things that way, the better I get at thinking about things that way, even if the tactics and strategies are different.
Yep.
You know?
Well, I think cognitively it's really similar. Shooting stages, and then your strategy, and kind of how you have to think about shooting the actual stage subconsciously. And then, I mean, it's kind of cheesy, okay, but do you remember what the definition of a battle drill is?
Okay.
I put you on the spot. It's kind of it's a
yeah,
little
I mean, I don't remember the exact verbiage, right? But basically it's a set of responses to a given stimulus in battle. Like where I'm reacting to contact, I'm dismounting from a vehicle, I'm conducting an L-shaped ambush.
But it's so that gets conducted subconsciously, and you don't really have to think about it because you've done it so many times. So
it's you're doing what a sports psychologist call chunking. You're building those chunks of skill. You can assemble like Lego blocks to handle whatever you're given. Like solving problems with your gun in a match.
I think it's important for guys to kind of recognize that, because it's the same, in my opinion, it's the same as getting those reps, those cognitive reps out of doing room clearing over and over and over and over and over and over, so that it comes subconsciously. You don't really have to think about it. And all those manual of arms type skills, that you develop subconsciously as well. Plans are always subject to fail. So if something goes wrong, it's very, very minor for those types of guys, because they've developed all that stuff subconsciously and don't really have to think about it.
I'm thinking about all the hours I spent with my teammates changing tires in the Iraqi sun. So if something went down and we were out in no man's land, we could change the tire and get the hell out of there. You know what I mean? And I mean, I know, like, if you haven't been there, you don't realize how important that is. And civilians are like, wait, you practice changing a tire? Yeah, we practiced that for hours. Like hours, till the sun went down.
What was your part time on a tire change?
Well, it was a team effort, so it wasn't really an individual part time. But you know what I'm saying? And that's, like, I think also, like, circling back around to giving advice to civilians, right? Figure out your battle drills. Figure out what you need to do. Like when my kid was young, I would play a game with him. And like if we were in the car, I would tell him down, and I would time him on getting out of his car seat and getting into the floorboard of the car. In the house, if I said the same thing, if I said down, he ran into the basement and got behind the fridge, safest place in the house. Right? And those were, he didn't know it. They were just a game to him. He was a little kid, but they were battle drills in case I had to defend my family. Right? So if you're a civilian, look at it that way. Like, what are my mission essential tasks? What's my medal? My mission essential task list. What do I have to be good at? And I think that, especially for the kind of competence you need just as a civilian who carries a gun, because like we said before, it doesn't have to be this, you don't have to be John Wick, right?
No, and you don't have to be as obsessive as I am, where I'm like hanging out in dirt pits every weekend.
But if you identify the things you need to be good at and make sure you have a reasonable amount of competence at those things, you're going to be head and shoulders above the vast majority of opponents you might face, I think.
Or at least prepared.
At least have a leg up. At least have a good starting point. All right. Well, before we wrap this up, because of course we have gone over an hour. I knew we would.
I had a feeling we might.
Oh, dude, I got to bring you back on when you get a chance, because I've really enjoyed this, but we got to pause it, because now I got to go do my math homework and go shoot a match and get back to you about it.
Good. Yeah, please do. I probably geek out on practice score competitor a little more often than I'd like to admit. But yeah, that's kind of how you need to do it too. Like, and honestly, you could probably get on practice score competitor even on a match that you did well on, and especially those low point value stages. Adjust it, so edit it, and then put in a no shoot or something else to really see how your match scores are affected. Because you'd be surprised. You'd be pretty surprised. It doesn't make that big of a difference, especially if it's a low value stage.
Yeah, and I probably have not been looking at it that way enough. And part of it's my personality type. Like I always want to do well on every stage. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But like I've looked at it that way for targets and target arrays. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I can blaze on this and it's low risk, but this array is, partials at distance. I need to kind of change things up a little bit and not let one suck me into shooting the other one the same way. Yeah.
Well, and you and I know better too. It's like, well, let your sights kind of dictate when you're and somehow on a stage, sometimes it does not work out that well, and you end up cranking one into a no shoot or something.
It amazes me how I can leave an array still from time to time, and as I'm leaving the array, go, wow, my dot was right in that no shoot.
So I had a buddy, Jake Taylor. He's out at 25th ID now, but him and I used to shoot together all the time. He's a really, really good, fast grandmaster open shooter. And he used to say, I like shooting red dots because I can see all my mistakes and then completely ignore them.
Well, it's funny how, who said this? It was one of the top guys said this, and it was like one of those kernels of wisdom that I immediately stole for myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, it's like, I miss. Everybody misses. Every time I miss, either the dot wasn't on the target when I pulled the trigger, or I moved the dot off the target when I pulled the trigger. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Yeah. Everything else is just a complicating factor, right? Everything else is just a distractor. But when you really boil it down, were the sights on the target, and did I pull the trigger without moving the sights?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Yeah, simple and easy are not the same thing.
No, they are not synonyms. Not at all.
No.
All right, brother. Congratulations again on the new gig.
Thank you.
I'm really stoked for you. It's well-deserved, and I can't wait to see the good things you do there. And, the only downside to this is it means we can't shoot any more steel matches in Texas. I'm sure you won't be coming out here again now.
No, so I only travel kind of when I want to now, which is nice, because it wasn't like that when I was primarily instructing. But I will travel to matches. I'll probably shoot just as much as I ever have, which it's kind of nice when it's at my convenience now.
Yeah.
More than anything else. But yeah, I think I'm going to focus this year on a couple of big area matches. I'm going to go try to shoot area 2 out in Rio Salado in Mesa. That's a really, really good match. I would highly recommend it. And typically for a area match, it's 2 days, but Rio puts on a 3-day match. So you end up shooting about 18 stages. You do 6 stops a day for 3 days. It's pretty good. They put on a really, really good match. So
nice. Yeah. I shot at Rio Salado. I shot a local when I was teaching a law enforcement class out there.
Yeah.
It was one of their weeknight steals.
Yeah.
Went out there. Yeah. Those were fun.
It's so hot out there. They kind of have to do that and run some stuff at night. But yeah, Rio's awesome because they've got a really big shooting community out there. Really, really good shooters all over that area. And I think because they run night matches, you can shoot probably 2-3 matches a week out there every single week of the month.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you ever do make it out to Texas again, we moved just south of Austin.
Yeah.
So I'm shooting a lot, like just outside of San Antonio now.
Okay.
And it's a nice range, a Cedar Ridge.
Cedar
They've
Ridge.
got, bunch of SEAL Challenge, bunch of USPSA, bunch of IDPA, just a bunch of good matches down there.
Good.
So, yeah, dude, you got to come visit. You got to come have some barbecue. This is officially the barbecue capital of Texas.
Okay. Well, you got me.
By state decree.
Yeah. Oh, well, now I got to come out there.
All right. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the episode as much as I did. I hope everybody got something valuable out of it. There's definitely a lot of good nuggets of wisdom in this one. So make sure and think about it and use it on the range. And I will talk to everyone next time.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Way is in Training. Please come back again as we explore how training makes us better at our craft and better in our everyday lives. See all of you soon.